What's going on, guys? So in today's video, we're going to be talking about the compression lock, okay, from Spyderco. In this case, I'm going to show you 5 different ways to open this knife that has the compression lock and 3 different ways to close it. Now keep in mind, the 5 different ways to open this knife could be applied to many other knives with different types of locking mechanisms. And as far as closing it, you can apply the same principle to other locking mechanisms as well. For example, like the axis lock, or the arc lock, or multiple other ones out there. So, I mean, even though this doesn't, apply only to this knife, these are just some different ideas on how to open and close your knives, right? But specific to this Para 3 from Spyderco. So first off, let's look at the compression lock in case you're not familiar with it. When the knife is open, you can see there's a liner on the top scale that pops over. So this essentially is a liner lock, but instead of the traditional liner lock where we know we're going to push it from the inside, there's a cutout on the back scale that gives you access to that liner, in which you can just push it over, okay? And that releases the blade and allows you to close the knife. So jumping right in, the very first way you can open this knife is with the Spydy Flick. Yes, super common. Just quick tip, I have a whole video on how to do the Spyderco Spydy Flick, but essentially what we do is you're bracing the knife, you're using your middle finger, and you're putting the nail inside your spider hull, okay? You don't have to necessarily have your hands like this, like you're Spider-Man shooting a web. But for some reason I always do that anyway. And you're just gonna flick your middle finger forward, all right? The only tip I can give that's really gonna help everyone, because there's a bunch of different ways I can put this, but the best, simplest way to put this is you have to make sure that when you're flicking this, you're at least flicking it straight out to, let's say like 12 o'clock all the way to, I don't know, 10 o'clock. So what I mean by that is that if you hold the knife like this and you try to flick out sideways, okay, look at the direction that my middle finger is going in relation to the knife. So the knife is facing this way. You see how the angle is different? My middle finger compared to my pointer finger over here. That's not going to give you a great flick. You're not going to flick it all the way out because all your pressure is pushing away and not towards the front of the knife, okay? So the more angle you have on your knife, the easier it's going to be to flick that out, okay? The only mistake I'm really seeing when people are saying, hey, I don't have a knack for this. I just can't do it. It just doesn't open all the way. That's because you're flicking too far away. So anyway, that is it. So you have to kind of change your position a little bit. So the knife, again, you're flicking upwards as opposed to outwards. And you can get that pretty much every time. So opening number 2 is the thumb flick. All right, pretty standard, pretty traditional. All right, flicking it open with your thumb. So in this case, it's kind of like the Spydy Flick, but instead of the back of your middle fingernail, you're using the back of your thumbnail, okay? So put your thumb in the spider hole and flick it out upwards. Same concept. You don't want to go out too much. You want to go up, all right? So there you go. Very simple. All right, number 3, the most boring but the most practical, just the slow thumb opening. All right, this is how most people are opening the knives anyway. They're using that opening hole, or in some cases a thumb stud or thumb disc, or whatever the case may be. And you're just going to gently push the knife open until it's locked and you're ready to cut. All right, so that is number 3. All right, so opening number 4 is the compression flick. All right, so basically if you push the lock when it's closed, all right, against the top scale, it releases all the pressure on the blade. So this way the blade actually moves freely. All right, so depressing that, you can do a little bit of a wrist flick, and you can open the knife that way, all right, without actually even having to touch the blade. So there you go, number 4. And finally, number 5, we have the Spyder Drop. Spyder Drop is when you hold the knife in a reverse position like this, and you pinch with your pointer finger and thumb onto the spider hole. Some people will grab right behind it because you're actually holding more of the blade, but just generally speaking, you could grab in this area here, all right, and you're going to do an abrupt flick down and stop, okay? You don't want to just go slow. You want to just use your wrist to flick down, and when you abruptly stop, okay, all the energy continues the handle down until it's open and locked, right? So, looks like this. Very simple. And then you can, of course, proceed to get the grip you want on the knife and be able to use it. So that is the Spyder Drop. So, quick recap. We have number 1, the Spyder Flick with the middle finger. Number 2, we have the thumb flick with the thumb. Number 3, we have the slow opening with the thumb. Number 4, we have the compression flick, which is depressing the lock and then flicking it open. And then, of course, the last one is the Spyder Drop. Okay, we're just going to flick it down in the reverse position. All right, now you got 5 ways to open this thing. How do you close it, right? Well, I have three major ways that I close a compression lock. All right, the first one is using gravity. By depressing the lock, the same as we did with the compression flick, we're going to allow this blade to freely move. Okay, so just pushing in that lock. Now, how do you use gravity? Well, you want it on a little bit of an angle, kind of like a 45-degree angle. When you depress the lock, the blade just freely drops and closes. Now, the trick here is that you want to be on a slight angle like this, right? Not quite a 45, but just a little bit higher, like, I don't know, maybe 30 degrees, if I had to guess. The problem is that if you're totally vertical, nothing happens. If you're totally horizontal, it closes halfway, okay? So by being on this angle here, it's going to close and almost swing back in a little bit, okay? And then, of course, you want to let go of the lock, and it'll let it lock up. All right, closing number 2. Our blade's open. Now we can use the compression flick to close it. It's literally the opposite of what we did to open it. So while open, you could depress that lock and just flick it closed. You're forcing that blade to close as opposed to using gravity. Now, these can have an advantage either way, just depends on your style, but if you use gravity, sometimes if you let go of that lock before it closes all the way, it'll pinch it like slightly open. It's not a big deal. This happens all the time. All right, just use a knife, maybe I'll close it and oh, no big deal. I bring my thumb and close it all the way. But by forcing it shut with the compression flick, sometimes you have a better chance of it closing all the way every time. And finally, closing number 3, once the knife is open, all right, in this particular knife, and there's other models as well, because the ricasso, or underneath where our sharpened edge is, this point here, because that's wider, what you're able to do is you can actually keep your fingers in line with the blade, which normally you would never do when you're closing a knife. But if you depress the lock and use the gravity method, it will stop right there, okay? It will stop without actually cutting you because the ricasso is coming in contact with your finger, all right? So what this basically does is it kind of does a half stop. Then, now that you've let pressure off of that lock, it held the blade in place. So as you move the blade around, it's not going to accidentally close, all right? So essentially what you're doing is you're just doing a quick little half stop, changing your position, so that your fingers are out of that channel, and then you can come in and close it. All right. So again, this is a quick thing. You can use like gravity, do this, or you can flick it down, but either way, you're not going to get cut. All right. I find that a lot of people do this, where you just depress that like that real quick, swing around and close it. This works every single time. Again, works on a variety of different knives, even with different locking mechanisms as well, as long as your hand position and the relation to that blade when you do close it is the ricasso hits you before any kind of edge contact. So this is, of course, the, I don't know, least safest way to close a knife, although nothing's ever going to happen unless your grip is way down here. So this is a huge warning. If your grip is too low and you do this, okay, obviously you're going to come in contact with the blade. So the big tip for this one, if you're going to do this, keep your hand nice and high on the knife, okay? Again, you're just using this basically as a makeshift half stop. All right, but I would say most people are just, the best combination I would say for opening and closing is just to slowly manually open it and use the flick to shut it. That's really the easiest. Or for some people, it's going to be the flick open, flick shut, you know, or the flick open, the thumb, flick shut. I mean, there's all different combinations, obviously, of those 5 openings and 3 closings you can do. Whatever floats your boat. Some's more fun than others. I think the Spyder Flick is just really cool looking, you know, it's just fun to do, but it could be a little bit annoying if you don't get those angles right and then you end up doing a half flick like that. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to be trying 2-3 times to open your knife. So, you know, practice all these different methods and find what works for you best. So that's it for this one, guys. Just want to give you some different ideas on how to open and close your Spyderco Para 3, as well as a variety of different knives using the same techniques. So that's all. Let me know what you think down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys tomorrow with a brand new video. Take care.